everybody. We're just getting the drinks real quick.
Getting all settled in here. Don't mind me.
We've got the, no, sorry, I got the Nico and the Una. I'm not sure where the Vincent and the Lulu are.
They'll be around. Well, maybe Vincent. Lulu's probably going to go sleep somewhere. Yes.
Oh, there's the Vincent.
Yeah, he's hiding.
Battle for the...
Battle for my chair.
Yeah.
Ah, right. There we go.
Just waiting for Blog Talk Radio to come on. We have Lee here with us tonight. She's going to commentate on the side.
Your show will go live in 5
Elvira.
seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Blog Radio.
Blog Talk Radio.
All right, so now we got everybody.
Woohoo! Welcome! We're back!
We are back after 3 long weeks. And yeah, if give people just a moment to tune in here. But yeah, it's been something. It's been crazy.
It's been a fun trip.
It was a beautiful trip. Oh, okay, muted. Got it. Good. All right. Don't need that kind of feedback. But yeah, the as you can see, the kitty cats are still feeling a little clingy from our absence.
Going to work is fun in the morning.
Yes, and but yeah, slowly but surely getting back into the swing of things after being 4 hours back from here.
Yes.
And arriving back at the house at 1 a.m. on Wednesday.
And then going straight to work.
And then going straight to work. So yeah.
Cheers to a fun work week.
We are still, I think we're still feeling the ramifications of that. Maybe just a smidge. But yeah, we will we'll chat more about our Alaska adventure a little bit another time, a little bit.
Yes.
There will be more to talk about there.
But you know, Chris has been at the monthly
the flowered cheetah oddities market.
Oddities market, and so we got a new cast member for our crew.
Yep, that's our buddy's this guy's pet. He needed a pet. So yeah, that's who this is. Haven't given him a name.
No, we haven't.
Have we named the skeleton?
The skeleton, that's employee of the month.
I love it. I mean, I'm offended, but I love it.
Well, you're employee of the month in the flesh this month.
Yes.
Yes.
Marcia was
Need a
last
badge.
month. Well, you can ask Tiffany. Marcia just got a adult in charge shirt.
Okay, I need a badge. That's great for the battle vest.
Yep, but yeah, this was from one of the vendors at the Flower Cheetahs Curiosities Market. The next one is going to be this coming Sunday. So that's one of the many things that we have coming up here in just the next couple of weeks. So there's that, which coincidentally, this next oddities market isn't only an oddities market, it's also going to be their Christmas in July market too. So it's going to be a whole big thing. You can come on down, you can do your spooky shopping, your holiday shopping.
It's all in one.
It's all in one, all under the heat of the July sun.
Bring a fan.
Yep, but it's just down the road in Chester, Virginia. Awesome little shop that they got down there. I recommend, even if you can't come down and check out the market, to stop in and visit them sometime, because they got all kinds of cool stuff in there.
I'm going to finally make it down this Sunday. I usually work Sundays, but I'm going to sneak out after work and go catch the last hour of it.
Yep.
So I can check it out and do some shopping.
I got a friend who's got a booth. Her name's Miranda. I don't know her.
Oh.
I'll shout out later.
After you look it up.
Right.
But yeah, so you can get fun little things like this guy and other fun stuff down there.
Yep.
So.
But before we even got that, on next Sunday, this coming Friday is going to be our next John Marshall House tour. So that's coming up. Tours at 7 and 8 o'clock at the John Marshall House, and then in turn in the beautiful Court End neighborhood. So that's on Friday. And then the following weekend, starting July 28th, 29th, that's going to be the Scares That Care Charity Weekend down in Williamsburg, and we'll be down there Thursday. We're coming back on Monday, but the whole thing really wraps up on Sunday.
Yes, so definitely come check that out. Again, we're the big sponsor for the 5K on Saturday. Chris will be out running. I'll be dancing at the table.
I don't know about running. but I'll be there. I'll be moving, be shambling.
Yes, our good friend Paul Hope, who works with us with Police and Paranormal, he's going to be there. CPRI is also going to be there. Paul's part of that group now, and Brad will be there presenting. So it'll be a fun, cool weekend that sports a good cause, so come on out and join us.
Yep. Yep, and so that brings us to the topic of this evening. So, our you might remember if you may have joined us a couple months ago. We did our first part 1 of Haunted Distilleries, and tonight we have part 2 for you. But in part 1, you may have, if you go back and watch it, you might be able to listen to us talk about Jura Distillery over there in Scotland. So we've got some lovely Jura Scotch here this evening that
And it is lovely.
It is amazing.
Yep,
Yeah.
that we're all partaking in. So
We found it in Canada, and they do it free coming home. So
yep. So
we bought it.
No, you bought it for a cheaper price.
Yes.
much cheaper
cheaper
price.
price.
I think the duty free we probably saved 60 to 70%.
So certainly.
We'll take it. But yeah, so cheers to some lovely Scotch here. We will, of course. It seems like every Scotch distillery has a ghost.
Mm-hmm.
We have already the makings of a script for a volume 3 of this,
We
and it's
do.
almost entirely Scotch distilleries.
And by the way, I haven't even touched the book I bought. That includes wineries and breweries as well.
Yep. So a lot of that.
So there's going to be more.
Yep. And we will be throwing in a couple of Scotch distilleries tonight, along with the other stories that we have to share. You going to go ahead and kick things off?
Unless you want to do this.
No, that's fine. I will say, this first one is not really so much of a ghost story, but it is definitely...
It can lead to some stories.
Oh, it leads to some stories. Definitely a
myth. It's a myth.
it's a
legend.
beverage that's associated with horrific occurrences, and so
That's the stories.
yes, I'll let you go ahead and
You
dive
want to
right
guess
into
what
that.
bevy this one is?
Does it have to do with a certain Richmond beer?
No.
No.
Oh,
No.
Okay.
Go to Europe.
go to Europe.
Specifically Toulouse-Tourac.
Toulouse.
Moulin Rouge.
Okay. Oh my. I do like me some absinthe.
Yes. We are talking about the Little Green Fairy.
Oh boy.
Because I could. One second, I'm going to look. There we go.
Have you guys had proper?
I have. One of my college professors actually made absinthe. We
I
called it the clown boot effect.
love you.
It was fantastic. All right, so while whiskey, scotch, and bourbon seem to lend themselves to hauntings and folklore more than any other distilled spirit, they hardly have cornered the market. As a matter of fact, there's one spirit whose reputation may be more sinister and fabled than any other distilled beverage, as it's unfair that it might be. We start with not a ghost story, but a titillating and sometimes grim brief history of the devil in the little green bottle, absinthe. First introduced in France in the 1840s, absinthe came to symbolize the peak of decadence and violence. To some, the drink symbolized creativity, while others, well, it was the purveyor of madness. Over the years, the fact and the fiction surrounding absinthe has blended so seamlessly that it can be difficult to sift through the libations' complex history. As the following tale of the horror will show, it has led many to point out that absinthe when the unthinkable occurs. It was late August of 1905 in the small village of Morangie, Switzerland, and 3 coffins stood open to the air. The mother's was the largest, adult-sized. A small casket held her 4-year-old daughter Rose, and the smallest coffin lay her 2-year-old daughter Blanche. Before the coffin stood John Lanfray, burly French-speaking laborer. Faces of his families as he wept, insisting he didn't remember shooting the 3. "Please tell me I haven't done this," he wailed. "I love my family and my children so much." Lefray had drunk his way through the previous day, beginning near dawn with a shot of absinthe diluted in water. A second absinthe shot soon followed. At lunch and during his afternoon break from work at a nearby vineyard, he downed 6 glasses of the strongest wine. He drank another glass before leaving work. Heading home, he stopped off at a cafe and drank black coffee with brandy. Back home, he finished a liter of wine as his wife watched in disgust. She called him lazy. He told her to shut up. She told him to make her. He took his loaded rifle from the wall and shot her through the forehead. When his daughter Rose came in to investigate, he shot her too. Then he went to the next room, walked to the crib of his other daughter Blanche, and shot her. From the domestic tragedy, the people of community drew one inescapable conclusion: the absinthe made him do it. Anti-absinthe sentiment had been bubbling throughout Europe, and in Switzerland it had boiled over. Absinthe, the mayor publicly declared, is the principal cause of a series of bloody crimes in our country. A petition to outlaw the drink gathered 82,000 signatures in just a few days. The press seized on Lefray's story, dubbing it the Absinthe Murder. For members of the anti-absinthe movement, including many newspaper editors, 2 glasses of the pale green liquid explained why a family lay dead. Prohibitionists could not have imagined a more potent metaphor for the social decay. La Gazette de la Zone, a French-language Swiss newspaper, called it the premier cause of bloodthirsty crime in this century. At his trial the following February, Lefray's lawyer declared him the classic case of absinthe madness, a medically ill-defined affliction, but one that had captured the public's imagination. The lawyers called to the stand Albert Mannheim, the leading Swiss psychiatrist. He examined the defendant and declared confidentially that only sustained daily corruption by the foul drink could have given him the ferocious of temper and blind rages that made him shoot his wife for nothing and his poor 2 children whom he loved. The persecution countered that the absinthe consumption was dwarfed by his extraordinary intake of other alcohol. The trial lasted a single day. Found guilty on 4 counts of murder, his wife, an examination revealed that she had been pregnant with a son. Lefray hanged himself in prison 3 days later. The canton of the Vaud, within the community that he was in, banned absinthe, and less than a month after his death. The canton of Geneva, reacting in its own absinthe murder, followed suit. In 1910, Switzerland declared absinthe illegal. Belgium banned it in 1905, and the Netherlands in 1910. In 1912, the U.S. Pure Food Board imposed a ban, calling absinthe one of the worst enemies of man, and if we can keep the people of the United States from becoming slaves to this demon, we will do it. By 1915, it had been banished from France, the heart of absinthe culture. Absinthe was not always the devil in a bottle. French name derives actually from the Greek absinthium, which the Greeks used not as an intoxicant but as a medicine. Typically made by soaking wormwood leaves in wine or spirits, this ancient absinthe supposedly aided childbirth. Hippocrates, often considered the first physician, prescribed it for menstrual pain, jaundice, anemia, and rheumatism. I take that prescription.
Oh, absolutely. I have.
Roman scholar Pliny of the Elders describes the chariot race champions drinking absinthium, its taste reminding them that the glory has a bitter side, a sentiment wholeheartedly embraced by later enthusiasts. For centuries, wormwood drinks remained primarily medicinal, though some recreational concoctions occasionally appeared, such as wormwood wine. And then it was in the 1930s, when the French army was entrenched in North Africa, that the more modern form of absinthe can trace its roots.
The 1830s.
I'm sorry, 1830s, not 1930s. The heat and the bad water took a toll on the French soldiers. With illness rippling through the ranks, the soldiers sought treatment for their ills with wormwood. They soaked it in their wine to cut the bitterness, and finding that it had effectively made a medicine that actually tastes good. When they returned to France, they brought the recipe for the recreational drug with them, dubbing it Absinthe, or for its distinct green color. The first absinthe remained a middle-class and upper-class indulgence, but it had an exotic appeal, and legends grew about its long history and supposedly hallucinogenic effects. As prosperity spread, more people partook of the air vert, and the green hour of the early evening when its unique smell of absinthe wafted through the air. Savvy customers realized that with a high-proof absinthe delivered more force for the franc, diluted with water, virtually no one could drink it straight. It went even further. By 1849, there were 26 French absinthe distilleries producing some 10 million liters of the popular beverage. Artists and writers such as Manet, Van Gogh, Oscar Wilde, and Ernest Hemingway helped provide the momentum for absinthe enthusiasts, while polite society took a dimmer view to those who consumed the green beverage. Individuals most disturbed by the green menace pushed studies seeking to prove that absinthe would rot your brain out. Can't be any worse than rock gut. And that it was the root cause of a steady decline in French culture. Such claims of once great nation now in decline spurred action and anger, though those claims were often based off of cherry-picked facts. Those who saw French culture collapsing would point to increasing instances of diagnosed insanity, to the strain of modern industrial life. Given the massive social and industrial changes of the 19th century, many unsurprisingly looked for culprits, and absinthe was the villain responsible for an entire host of social ills. A ban was recommended on the Green Devil. Still, it took the Lafayette murders of 1905 to convert many citizens into activists. Of course, despite the bans on the Green Fairy, they never really died. Bootleggers in Switzerland continued to produce absinthe. Spain never outlawed the drink, and a few small distilleries produced it throughout the 20th century. In 1994, a Czech distiller began marketing absinthe in the United Kingdom, where thanks to a legendary reputation, it found a loyal subculture following. Soon enough, dozens of copycat brands appeared. In response to pressure from their own distilleries, and perhaps noting the lack of modern absinthe murders, many European countries revised their absinthe bans, and new restrictions effectively legalized the absinthe. Switzerland.
The legal version of oops, my bad.
Switzerland lifted its ban on absinthe production on sale of March of 2005. France, however, only allows the label absinthe on products destined for export. Absinthe produced for local consumption instead carries the label spirituose or based on the plants to absinthe, or wormwood-based spirits. The United States has complicated laws about thorn-free absinthe, making illegal the importation of most European varieties. Even this diminished form is now legal to produce and sell absinthe in the United States. Nearly 100 years, the Green Fairy lives again.
We know one distillery,
Yep.
Thousand Island Distillery.
Yes, it does.
They make it. It was quite tasty too.
It was very tasty.
I forget exactly what it was. It's been a couple of years.
Yeah.
But brilliant cocktail.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
I've only had a Van Gogh brand.
Van Gogh brand?
Yeah.
Is there one?
No, they used him as a toaster child. I thought it said Van Gogh on it, but
Would make sense.
Yeah, it
it's
was.
delicious.
It is a very tasty beverage.
It is.
I like licorice.
You really shouldn't actually pour it over sugar and light it on fire. That's not good for it.
Yeah.
You just pour it, you put sugar in the water and it should be fine.
Yeah.
Fire just makes
Fire
things
is a
fun.
no-no. It's pretty, but it's a no-no.
It's fancy presentation, which, yeah, taste be damned, right?
Give it to me with the sugar and the water.
But yeah.
That's it.
So, got you off to the start with all the tongue twisters.
And
Oh my
I
goodness,
did
and
not-
the French.
And I did not have enough to drink for that. It was not, I did not do warm-ups or anything.
Yeah, I've been the one who was studying French more recently than you, too.
Yeah, but
It was fun listening to you.
I hang out with
Sorry
medievalists.
for-
We can't speak French either. It's fine.
Sorry for the butchery I just performed on that tongue.
It's okay. We're going to move on to English-speaking locations now. So,
And distilleries.
yeah, so we're going to be bouncing back and forth a little bit. We're going to go from France and from Western Europe to bouncing over to this side of the Atlantic. We're going to go all the way over to the foot of the Rocky Mountains, where we are going to land in the town of Green Mountain Falls, Colorado, where you'll find Black Bear Distillery. Now, they take a traditional, kind of old-school approach to a wide variety of distilled spirits, and Black Bear takes pride in their handcrafted small batches. Situated in a log cabin at 7,800 feet above sea level, a trip to Black Bear Distillery can be like stepping back into an operation from the frontier a century ago. Founded by master distiller Victor Matthews, PhD, this guy's a doctor. Just a few years back, in 2013, it took a few years of weaving through bureaucratic red tape and other challenges to get the doors open in 2016. At first, Matthews wasn't sure which way his business would go. Would he be a traditional distiller? Would he just bottle fun, flavored spirits? He ultimately split the difference and made a small but unique mark on the distilling scene. Traditional, accessible, rustic, and fun. Perhaps it's these surroundings that draws in the resident spirit of the distillery. The feel of something familiar and inviting from another time many years ago. The story starts with a young girl drowning in Green Mountain Falls Lake, situated just a couple hundred feet from the distillery cabin. Her connection to the distillery is uncertain, but she has made the cabin her haunting home ever since. While her activity is mostly left to a shadow in the corner or audible footsteps, she did wish the owner a very clear good night shortly after he bought the building. She has made her presence known on several occasions, and children visiting the distillery with their parents have often asked about the little girl playing in the hallway. Since 2016, the distillers have named the little girl Molly. That was the year that a visitor who is sensitive to the ghosts around them came in and had a friendly encounter with the little girl. While she has yet to give up her reasons for lingering on, the friendly nature of the little girl has made her a welcome presence at this small operation in the foothills of the Rockies for as long as she chooses to hang around. Nice little thing story there for you.
Yes.
Now
I
we're
can't
gonna
remember if that's the one we visited on the way up to Estes one time.
no other direction.
Other
It's down. I think it's down the other side of Boulder.
Okay.
So, yeah, down in that direction. Was it a distillery or a brewery that we visited? It definitely wasn't a log cabin either.
No.
It was more.
But it was right on a creek, which is why I was wondering.
Yes. I think that was all the way up in Estes for that matter.
It was right before you went into the.
Mm-hmm.
It was, ow! Excuse you, sir. That was rude. I'm not paying attention to him. I'm talking.
Yeah, shame on you.
You know who rules this storytelling session?
Yeah. So, we are going to stay on this side of the Atlantic for now, with a move to, we're going to discuss the colorful history of Thornton Distilling Company, located in the oldest standing brewery in Illinois. It can be traced back to 1857 when immigrant brewer John Bielfeldt erected a brewery with a 10-barrel kettle on the west bank of Thorn Creek in the small limestone mining village of Thornton, Illinois. An artesian well tapping into a 1,500-foot deep aquifer that is fed by Lake Superior was already on the property where a log cabin, saloon, and brewery had opened in 1836. This mineral water proved ideal for the brewing of exceptional beer. Just down the street from the brewery was the beginning of a large rock quarry, which is today the largest limestone quarry in the Western Hemisphere. John would go on to quench the insatiable thirst of the multitude of workers and quarriers that mined the land and laid the foundation for what is today the city of Chicago. At the onset of Prohibition, John's brewing company was sold to Carl Ebner. Ebner bottled soda pop, but also continued to secretly produce beer. Soon, federal agents raided the brewery with axes, smashing the vats, and thousands of gallons of beer were poured into Thorn Creek.
Party foul.
Yeah. On an industrial scale. The brewery fell under the control of Al Capone and his henchman Joe Saltis, who supplied Chicago speakeasies far and wide. In 2014, as the oldest standing brewery in Illinois sat in a blighted state of disrepair, when craft distillers Andrew Howell and Jake Weiss happened upon its colorful history and discovered the historic limestone-filtered artesian well still flowed, they decided that together with their friend Ari Clafter, they opened Thornton Distilling Company at the historic site. Producing a line of Dead Drop spirits, the name Dead Drop comes from a bygone Prohibition-era bootlegging term. Oftentimes, barrels of whiskey will be left at a secret location for pickup at a later date when the coast is clear. Because of the building's colorful history and long tradition for malt fermentation, the founders thought this name would be quite appropriate for their new enterprise. Now, our mentioning and emphasis on the artesian well is very relevant to the topic at hand. Many believe that the limestone surroundings of the well produce not only water that is ideal for distilling, but that it may also produce energy for the paranormal spirits that linger about the property today as well. Like so many other haunted locations with caves, the limestone acts as an aquifer for paranormal activity. If the legends are true, gangsters used the limestone caves beneath the distillery to interrogate, torture, and possibly even murder their rivals. Renovators did find human remains in the walls of the building back in the 1950s, so perhaps some great pain and anguish took place by the well. And perhaps this has led to some intense hauntings at the Thornton Distilling Company today.
Modern day Casa de Amontillado.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's Chicago for you.
Now, the last tenant in the building before Thornton Distillery was known as Widow McCleary's Pub, a business that was also renowned for its paranormal activity. A hotbed of paranormal activity attributed to the mafia, investigations at the old pub frequently turned up spooky photos, electronic voice phenomena, audible disembodied voices, apparitions, cold spots, orbs, and more. Some investigations were allowed to resume after the distillery moved in, and it seems that although the building was left vacant of any living tenants for 15 years, the ghosts never left. Activity at the distillery can be very unsettling at times. Employees have been left shaken by taps on the shoulder only to turn around and find that no one's there. Old floorboards have also been witnessed to flex and wobble as if someone were walking around, but again, no one is there. Inexplicable cold gusts will sometimes whip around the open floor, even on warm days when the air conditioning is off. A variety of ghostly images have been captured throughout the building, showing circular and foggy outlines, most of them taken around the area of the opening for the spring water. Some customers have reported witnessing glassware jump off of the shelves, smashing to the floor when no one's nearby.
Opa!
Thank you.
You're welcome.
She was waiting.
Few employees willingly stay on at the building alone, whether it is day or night. Clairvoyants who have been out to visit the site have reported that they feel a lot going on. They explain that most of the activity is rooted in the violence and improper deaths that occurred in the building during the Mafia days. The daughter of a one-time night watchman at the old brewery recounted her father's stories of the nightly goings-on around the establishment. He believed that the brewery was also haunted by one of his predecessors, a former night watchman named Hunt. In his time, over a century ago, Mr. Hunt lived in the back of the brewery. Apparently, Mr. Hunt liked his surroundings well illuminated because the lights in these back rooms would sometimes turn themselves back on after being shut off by the night watchman. We suppose that's a little less unnerving than being unexpectedly plunged into darkness by a resident spirit, but all the same. So if you're looking for the warmth of a distilled spirit with a side of a ghostly chill, a stop by Thornton Distilling in Illinois may have exactly what you're looking for.
Okay, I might go to Chicago just so I can pop over to this place.
My old roommate is moving to Chicago soon.
So road trip.
Absolutely. I hear there's a wizard there too. That's a Harry Dresden joke for those of you from the 90s.
Older than that.
Is it?
You just made me feel old. All right. Of course, when we're talking about hauntings, we're going to have a white lady. Because we always have a white lady. Or a lady in white.
Lady in white.
Either one, same sort of thing. Nico's like, I'm out. Peace out.
He's had enough.
All right, so we're going to talk about some Scotch distilleries, haunted ones, of course. And we're going to go over to Glenmorangie Distillery. As we mentioned before, we didn't exhaust at all our distilleries. They're Scotch distilleries, so there are going to be more to come. But let's head back to Scotland, where in the northern reaches of the country we find Glenmorangie Distillery on the shores of Donarach Firth and the northern reaches of mainland Scotland. According to the company, the earliest record of production of alcohol at Morangie Farm dated to 1703, and in the 1730s a brewery was built on the site that shared the farm's water source, the Tarlaghy Spring. A former distillery manager, William Matheson, acquired the farm in 1843 and converted the Morangie brewery into a distillery, equipped it with 2 second-hand gin stills, and he later renamed this distillery Glenmorangie. The distillery was purchased by its main customer, the Leith firm MacDonald and Muir, in 1918. The MacDonald family would retain control of the company for almost 90 years. Now, Glenmorangie was like all distilleries and breweries in Britain, suffered terribly between 1920 and 1950, with Prohibition and then the Great Depression in the United States, reducing whiskey sales.
You didn't even pregame.
I did not. Another shot. Here we go. Whew. That one went up the nose. During World War II. Oh, sorry. It was basically mothballed between 1931 and 1936. The Depression ended with World War II, but the war effort left fuel and barley in short supply, and the distillery, again, was mothballed between 1941 and 1944. I don't understand why whiskey makes the soldiers happy. Keep them happy. Okay, moving on. Exports of whiskey were important during the war, but the enemy action disrupted and destroyed deliveries to the United States and Canada. Towards the end of the war, and in the immediately post-war period, the distillery increased production and was running at full capacity by 1948. The number of stills was increased from 2 to 4 during 1977, and the water supply became a concern during the 1980s when a development of the land around the Torregi Springs seemed likely. Development could have reduced the quality and the quantity of the water available to the distillery. So the decision was made to purchase around 600 acres of land around and including the springs. The distillery once again expanded, that's a typo.
My bad.
In the 1990s and early 2000s, bringing the total number of stills to 12.
I may have been under the influence when I was editing.
At least you admit it. Today, Glenmorangie Distillery is owned by the French drinks company Moët Hennessy Louis Vuitton. Yes, Hennessy owns it. Mm-hmm. We learned a lot about Hennessy on our cruise.
We did.
Oh,
Very
yes,
fascinating.
we did.
And tasty.
And it's worth an awful pretty penny to a certain sheik.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get into that story when we're done. Anyway, that is quite the mouthful for fancy brand names. Okay, the Glenmorangie brand represents this upscale fashion with its Scotch whiskies named the Quinta Reuben, the Nectar d'Or, and La Santa. Quite unusual for a Scottish distillery to be sporting French names. They may have opinions about that. But it seems that the strategy is working out well for the company so far. Globally, it claims about 1/6 of the entire single malt market. So yeah, they're doing well for themselves.
You do okay.
Now, Frenchy, fancy French names aside and marketing aside, there's one thing that the shares within the most Scotch distilleries, and that is everyone seems to have their own ghost. And just so that happens that the ghost of the Glenmorangie Distillery is the most incorporeal of them all. Its haunting ground was the malting floor, where traditionally new apprentices began learning the art of distillation. Even the most skillful and sought-after master distiller were able to recall his long hours on the malting floor. If you want the most boring job ever, this is it. If truth be told, it's monotonous. At Glenmorangie, after steeping the barley in the water from the Torregi Springs, the grain would be spread out over 4 large malting floors to begin its artificial germination process. We have a battle royale going over. The key to this lengthy process is a 10 to 12 days at the right temperature. The sprouting grain would need to be thinned or thickened to maintain a fairly steady temperature of 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Warm, sultry weather would be a real danger. Left to itself, the temperature could rise up to 10 degrees in only a few hours, quickly ruining the batch. This is how apprentices would spend most of their time, watching the temperature, turning the malt, on their toes for 8 hours at a stretch, both day and night. I gotta tell you, a 7-hour shift as a barista hurts. I feel these guys' pain. At Glenmorangie, there was a further anxiety added to this already intense and tedious job. On their first day, the manager would take a new apprentice aside and explain in a very kindly and sympathetic manner that during the night shift they might well encounter the ghost of a lady dressed in white. Nobody knows who she was or how she came to be there, but it is said that her terrifying appearance has driven more than one unfortunate worker to insanity. This is not how you keep workers on the payroll.
Seems to have kept them awake.
Just saying.
It was a different time.
The result of this little talk was, of course, that even the warm and the comfortable malting room, no apprentice ever managed to get so much of a wink of sleep. And conveniently, no malt was ever spoiled. Nowadays, the malting process is, of course, carried out away from the distillery, and this one small break with tradition has been necessitated by the soaring demand for the Glenmorangie and subsequent need to increase its output. Apprentices cut their teeth in the cooperage, caring for the endless stream of barrels that the distillery requires from day to day. No more malt floors. Rather cautiously or curiously, the manager reports that this was precisely why the White Lady has chosen to move along as well. Some say that Glenmorangie's White Lady was a spooky story made up to scare the apprentices so they wouldn't fall asleep on the job. Nonetheless, members of the staff at the distillery have been puzzled by the strange occurrences for many years. Windows breaking inexplicably, carefully hung wallpaper sliding off dry walls without so much of a tear, mindfully stacked boxes being found in a jumble against the door, all happening at night when no one's around. Whether Glenmorangie's resident spirit is carefully crafted story, or in fact there is something more paranormal going on within these walls, generations of employees have passed through the distillery's doors with the assumption that they are never unwatched and never alone. And we're not done yet.
No, not even close. Well, maybe close. We're about 2/3 of the way through. We got a little more to go.
Well, we have another Glen.
We do, of course. Well, I mean,
It's
Yes.
Scotland. Everything is Glen.
yeah.
Everything's Glen.
Every other Scotch distillery, Glen something or other. So,
Or if it's not Glen, it's Loch.
yes. But for this, we are going to the extreme opposite end of Scotland. Along the southwest coastline, you can find Campbeltown. Considered the principal town on the peninsula of Kintyre,
My people.
this
We made Lee happy.
Look, we're not gonna admit that they my people, but
Scotland is about people.
I
will
was more talking
so-
about the Campbell area.
No, but I will somehow prove that Scotland is my people along with Ireland.
Okay.
Because
I mean-
I feel so at home in Scotland and so at home in Ireland. You just step on the ground and you feel it.
To be fair, the Vikings went to Scotland first, and then they went to Ireland.
Yes.
So you very well could have
We people.
hopped. That's how my people did it.
There's something wrong with
Oh,
that.
then the Vikings were all over the Isles. All over.
Cheers.
Yeah.
To your people and my people.
Cheers to that. So, anyways, yes, Campbeltown, principal town on the peninsula of Kintyre, and this is just like a little narrow strip of land that produces some of the finest single malts in all of Scotland. As an isolated corner of Scotland, the Kintyre Peninsula had a long tradition of illicit distilling, at least until the 1823 Excise Act made legal distillation a more financially rewarding prospect. This stimulated legitimate distillation in Campbeltown, with a couple dozen new distilleries opening their doors by 1835. Today, not quite so many distillers remain, but one of the oldest and most well-known of the bunch will be Glen, Scotia. Looking much as it did in the 19th century when Duncan McCallum built the malting floors of the facility, it makes for an impressive edifice facing the Campbeltown's High Street. Established in 1832 as Scotia, the distillery was the creation of the town's Dean of Guild James Stewart and Provost John Galbraith, whose families operated it until 1891. In that year, the business was bought by Duncan McCallum, who had established Glen Nevis Distillery in 1877. Around this time, Scotia was equipped with 3 stills and boasted an annual capacity of 85,000 gallons. In 1919, Scotia was one of 6 Campbeltown distilleries, including Glen, which formed West Highland Malt Distilleries with a view to sharing costs and prevent potential closures. However, in 1923, West Highland entered voluntary administration, which is basically a fancy legal term for saying that it entered liquidation bankruptcy, with 5 of the 6 founding distilleries closing forever. Only the intervention of Duncan McClellan, who bought back Scotia, saved it from the same fate. The Scotia, too, fell silent in 1928, but managed to reopen 2 years later. Sadly, however, the distillery's champion, Duncan McClellan, was discovered drowned in Cross Hill Loch that year, aged 83. We'll touch on that some more in just a moment.
That almost sounded like you had an aged scotch for 83 years. Okay. I might be getting slightly tipsy.
Are you?
I'm enjoying it. This is a really nice scotch.
It is
It is.
quite good.
There's still a whole lot more over there.
I think we should have bought 2 bottles.
Yeah. Next time.
Time to go to Canada.
Yeah. So, now, as was noted before with Glenmorangie, Prohibition in the USA took a heavy toll on the Scottish distilling industry. Campbeltown's distilling industry was decimated, with more than 20 distilleries being reduced to just 2 by 1935. Scotia was purchased in 1933 by Bloch Brothers, which subsequently added Glen to the name, and owning and operating the distillery until 1954. In subsequent decades, the distillery changed hands on numerous occasions. In that time, the distillery operated in fits and starts, sometimes mothballed due to financial hardship, and other times having its output used to craft blended scotches. When it finally landed in the hands of the Loch Lomond Group in 2014, it was put to work crafting a range of single malt scotch, and a visitor center and shop were added to the premises. Distilling capacity was also increased with the addition of new fermenters and warehousing. Despite the modern additions, there is a part of Glen Scotia's past that lingers on. On December 23, 1930, distillery owner Duncan McClellan died in mysterious circumstances, allegedly drowning himself in Cross Hill Loch, which was also Glen Scotia's water supply, after losing a fortune in a crooked business deal. While his corporal body has passed on, his spirit apparently still returns to haunt the distillery that he put so much of his time and effort into.
It's in each and every bottle.
Yes. Apparently, McClellan's specter likes to keep an especially close eye on contractors who have reported being watched by a ghostly presence. Perhaps McClellan wants to ensure that no more business deals turn sour, like the one that reportedly drove him to take his own life. In addition to the contractors, employees won't likely venture into the less illuminated areas of the distillery when it's dark. So if you want to get off the beaten path to visit a haunted Scottish distillery, Glen Scotia should be near the top of your list.
That hand would really...
It's got good whiskey.
You read, I'll start looking at flights.
Our credit card will love us.
No, we're not looking at flights right now.
Kiddies can go to Scotland? Because, we've had that discussion again.
I totally go to Scotland with you guys.
It'd be a
Road
blast.
trip!
Oh yeah, road trip.
Road trip.
I feel like we'd sink
Yeah.
for a bit,
We'll just follow the back of his one shirt that says "Got Scotch." It's
Yeah,
got
there you
all
go.
the distilleries on it. I don't remember Jura being on there. I'd have to look again.
Have to look again, yeah.
Anyway,
It might be that the shirt only did mainland.
maybe.
But anyways,
Alright, so we're going to look at the historic Dallas Dew Distillery. Of course, it doesn't make whiskey anymore, but the site remains a fascinating place for those to learn about the history of Scotch Mulch whiskey. Here you can step back in time to see how whiskey was made in the 1900s. And get up and close and personal to the machinery and the processes that helped put Speyside whiskey on the map as a global brand. Now, for those of you who have not had Speyside, it's the smoky whiskey. It's very peaty. Nope, I'm wrong.
that's Islay.
That's Islay. I'm sorry. I've been drinking.
But there is Highland, Lowland, Speyside,
Okay,
and Islay.
Islay. Okay. Is Speyside the food one? Or is that the little one?
I'd have to look back on
It's been a while since we took that tour.
a tasty tour.
It was a very tasty tour, and they definitely have distinct smells. All right, so I've been corrected. It is not the smoky one. Anyway, Dallas Dew Distillery was the local idea of a local entrepreneur, Alex Edward, and in 1898, he built 2 distilleries, Glenmorangie and Dallas Moor. Edward's primary aim was, at the time, to produce malts for blends that were, of course, the dominant drink at the time. However, before he went into production, Edward sold Dallas Moor to Glasgow blending firm Wright and Gregg Limited, who used the distillery's unique malt as a key ingredient in their famous Roderick Dew. The blend lent its name to the distillery, and the site has been known as Dallas Dew ever since. Dallas Dew Distillery fills its first barrel on June 3rd of 1899, and its last on March 16th of 1983. In between, it has a very checkered existence. The distillery, of course, closed during the First World War, and was afterwards sold to J.P. O'Brien and Company Limited. When the Glasgow Company went bust in 1921, the Dallas Dew was bought by Benmore Distillery. The new owners invested heavily on site, but the Great Depression forced closure in the 1930s. In April of 1939, soon after reopening, the distillery was badly damaged by fire. Production began again in 1947, but finally ended in 1983 due to a failing demand as for an unreliable water supply. When it was in operation, Dallas Dew typically employed around 15 men who were expected to do anything and everything to keep production moving forward, including unloading the barley, shoveling the peat, rolling out the barrels. The exception was the exciseman, who was employed by Customs and Excise Government Department, but provided with a house and office by the distillery. Morris Walsh was Dallas Dew's most famous exciseman, who also happened to be the author of the best known for The Quiet Man, for those of you who love your Irish movies with John Wayne. And of course, if you haven't heard the novel, you've heard of this film, as I said, with John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara. While the distillery was closed for nearly 40 years, it is now a museum and a visitor attraction. There seems to be at least one distillery employee who is still hard at work. In the distillery's quiet hours, footsteps and other unexplainable noises are often heard from the old malting floors, as if to emphasize that someone is still down there trying to get some work done. The old style light switches that were not known for easy operation will sometimes be flipped on without intervention of any physical hands. Even during the daylight hours, visitors at the museum will report the heavy sensation of being watched by an intelligent presence. Many believe that this is the spirit of an unfortunate worker at the distillery who somehow fell into a mash tun and drowned. With mash tuns, it's typically operating at temperatures of about 150 degrees Fahrenheit. This would have been a very awful fate to endure. So the next time you feel the need to raise a glass, but are maybe struggling to decide what to toast, perhaps you can give a thought to those who worked hard to put those delicious beverages into your hands, and those who may have lost their lives in the effort to do so. And with that, we're going to come back over to the States.
Yes.
Because it's
You
time
guys
to come to
done
the States.
Cardew yet?
Mm-hmm.
You guys done Cardew?
I have to look and see if I noted that on the third script.
I think it's on the third. I know I remember reading a story about it.
Have to go back and look.
I've done so many scripts I can't keep the straight. We will look.
So, but yeah, we have not done that one, and it is not in the script. As a matter of fact, this is our last one for the evening that we have right here. But turning our attention back to this side of the Atlantic, and this would be the closest one to home for us. It's just going to be a little drive down to the south, going to North Carolina. where you'll find an abandoned prison that has been renovated into a unique distillery, and perhaps
road trip.
yes, and perhaps
Road trip.
this legitimate road trip here, and it perhaps has brought along some of its previous inhabitants.
Okay.
Now, this is a really interesting place. So we're going to get into some details about the distillery itself and some of its history, just because this is really fascinating. First of all, the place's name is Southern Grace Distillery, and is home to the first legally made 130 proof moonshine in the heart of Cabarrus County, North Carolina.
I will not be drinking that.
It gets you.
Yeah. Makes her sick as soon as it touches her lips.
Yeah, I will not be drinking moonshine whatsoever.
Moonshine, not her friend. Almost as bad as white chocolate.
Yeah.
But anyways,
Perfect.
yeah, it is really.
I can't eat white chocolate.
No.
It's not pretty.
But, so, we digress. So, this was also the first distillery in the United States to be located in a former prison. The Cabarrus Correctional Center in Mount Pleasant, North Carolina, formerly housed up to 400 inmates at a time. It operated from 1929 to 2011 when it closed due to budget cuts. The distillery's story actually starts with a dog. Maya was just 7 years old when she passed away from a blood disease. Her owner, Tom Thacker, was grieving for his loss and began to have those what is the meaning of life heart-to-heart conversations with his friend and co-worker Leanne Powell. The two natives of Cabarrus County met while working for a former United States representative. Soon they both discovered their love for whiskey, and with Tom being a bourbon aficionado, the pair decided to go for it, and soon Southern Grace Distillery was born. The two friends, along with distiller Perry Morris, first opened up in 2013 in the old Warren C. Coleman Mill in Concord, built at the beginning of the 20th century. Coleman was a former slave and was the first African American in the United States to open his own textile mill. Not long after they had been in the mill, they outgrew the space, however. They were in search of a location when they discovered the abandoned Cabarrus County prison. They knew right away that this was the spot. On top of having the space they needed, talk about a tourist attraction. I mean, we want to go. Distillery in a prison? Yeah.
Road trip.
Yep. So, Southern Grace leases approximately 20,000 square feet of the old prison, including what were the visitors' check-in building and chapel, which now serve as the distillery's welcome center, and the original 1929 dorm that is the new barrel house, and the new dorm that houses the manufacturing. By comparison, they had only about 2,200 square feet in the Coleman Mill. During renovations, they aimed to preserve as much of the original prison architecture as possible. Now, when visitors stop by Southern Grace, they are led to the original chapel to watch a 15-minute video on the history of the prison and bootlegging, including the testimony of a few of the prison guards who had worked there. It turns out that when the prison first opened in 1929, many of its original residents were convicted bootleggers. Not too surprising, considering that we were still in the midst of Prohibition. The prison itself was also the result of a North Carolina prison reform bill in 1925 that outlawed inhumane practices like flogging and beating prisoners, leading the state to build modern regional prisons like this one. Now, despite the reforms, many early prisoners still faced harsh treatments like the hot box, a windowless isolation shed with a fire furnace and no fresh air. Before modern visitors make the walk to the distillery's barrel house, they can see this structure, which is one of only 2 hot boxes left in North Carolina. Moving on to the barrel house, you'll first notice the pounding music emanating from the interior of the building. But as you enter, the music stops. Southern Grace uses an interesting process to age their bourbon in the barrels by blasting them with music. The process is called sonic aging, and the theory is that the sound waves will agitate the bourbon, increasing its frequency of contact with the barrel.
So, all those of you who've been watching Stranger Things, you know where Eddie Munson has gone to.
Yeah. So, this is a controversial theory. Some think it's just a marketing gimmick, others think it's legitimate. We're not going to get into that. We are not distillers by any stretch.
We're gonna go and try it sometime.
We'll taste it sometime.
You know, like, all I'm saying is my bourbon likes the same music as I am.
Yeah.
Come on.
I think think when I edited it, I think I took out the details, but I think they prefer 80s hair metal.
Yeah,
I am so down.
As I said, Eddie Munson is there.
I am so down.
In fact, they need to have that actor there for a promotional event.
Yeah.
We do it.
He totally would.
So anyways, regardless of the effectiveness of the sonic aging, most agree that Southern Grace's Convict bourbon stands amongst some of the finest bourbons out there. The uniqueness and quality of Southern Grace Distillery has earned it countless mentions in the media. And while they generally focus on the bourbon and the history of the prison that preceded the distillery, some will dig a little further. There has long been chatter about the prison's sometimes dark history and that there may be some spiritual residue left from before.
Conviction.
Conviction?
Yes.
Thank you for catching that.
No problem.
Conviction bourbon.
It's very good.
This is why we have her here tonight.
Hello.
Somebody needs
We're her
to
ABC employee.
We have a resident expert.
somebody needs to keep us in line this evening, apparently.
Well, yeah. You gave me the same whiskey you've been drinking.
Which is so fabulous. I need more.
So, anyways, keys, literally keys, perhaps the most sought after item by a convict planning an escape, will frequently go missing only to reappear just as mysteriously. Disembodied footsteps will sometimes accompany flickering lights in the dim recesses of the barrel house. Inexplicable sounds will also echo through the vacant chambers of the former institution, rendering most individuals too unsettled to explore and investigate the darker corners of the building. Dark corners aside, if there were any site on the property that would be the most likely to house a tortured ghost, it would be the hot box, a place where misery and madness can still be felt by those who lay eyes on it today. Now, if you're unwise enough to think that you might try to hide and do a little late-night exploring after close, you had best be prepared to deal with the consequences. Just like its prison days, the distillery is locked down tight at night. And just between us, I don't think that any amount of bourbon and paranormal investigating is worth getting locked in a haunted prison. Legal issues aside, the unsettled spirits of past convicts don't sound like the best company to keep, and in the end, you may very well find yourself spending a lot more than a single night behind bars, most assuredly without any access to bourbon.
And if y'all have watched any of the shows that have visited prisons, you know they like to follow you home.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying.
Yep.
So when are we leaving for this one?
For what, going to North Carolina?
Yes.
My mama lives down there.
We can make a road trip in our off season or low season.
I got some friends in Charlotte.
Yeah, I don't see why not. Go ahead, swing down there, maybe catch a Checkers game.
I'd be up for
The
that.
Charlotte Checkers, the hockey team.
Catch some hockey, go to some haunted
They
distilleries.
have Checkers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm assuming they still do. I saw a game down there when I went down on business 12, 13 years ago.
I was jealous when he did that because they did not have hockey down there when I lived there. I so would have been at every game.
So, I 12, 13 years, who knows? I'm assuming that's still there. But they
I
played in
wouldn't
the
recognize
Monster Arena where was the I don't know basketball. Charlotte Hornets.
Hornets, yes.
Yeah. They.
I was there while Muggsy was there. That was fun.
But yeah, they had that massive arena for the NBA, and they put out a hockey rink and they played some hockey. Had the Hershey Bears down, a team that we are very familiar with.
Yes.
They aren't.
Yes.
That's
And,
another team we need to just go up and see up in Hershey.
They had their way with Checkers that night.
Oh my.
Yep.
Well, the Hershey team was a really good team.
Oh yeah, they've historically been an excellent team.
Yeah. So,
But
yes, Betty, I put your friend back up there. And your friend would like some drinks.
we might have another bevy after we get off the line. Off the air here.
But we did promise you some stories from our trip. So as those of you who have been following know that Chris and I went to Vancouver and we went to Alaska afterward, and we did a ghost tour in Vancouver. If you ever get a chance to, Vancouver Ghost, fantastic team. Definitely go check them out. They have 3 routes. Right now it's just one that they're running and one available for private tours, but they're hoping to bring the 3rd one online as well. But definitely go check them out, and it takes place down in the historic Gastown, which is the original part of the city. So
Beautiful area.
Beautiful area. You get to learn a whole lot about it, and we actually went and ate at the old spaghetti factory, which was haunted as well.
Mm-hmm.
Haunted bathroom, by the way.
Ah.
Yeah.
One
We're
of
familiar
those.
with those.
Yeah.
Yeah, and apparently he's very much like the one at Rosie's.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I was like, the story was coming out. I'm like, I know this guy. Does he transfer between Virginia and Vancouver?
Takes a flight.
Vancouver's a beautiful city. It's relatively new. I mean, it really didn't come.
1800s.
Yeah, it didn't come into being until the very end of the 1800s.
Yeah.
What does it feel like to go to a city as an American and like find it being new?
It's like
interesting.
the city's as old as my house.
Yeah, like a foreign city, I should say,
Yeah.
as an American.
Yeah.
But I gotta tell you, I would go and I would spend at least a week or 2 weeks in Vancouver on its own just to explore the area and the environments.
I've heard some wonderful things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we definitely need to go back.
The weather
Definitely.
too.
Oh, the
Oh,
weather
the
was
weather's
gorgeous.
perfect.
I mean, we went on a whale watch on Sunday, and it poured that day, but it was fine because we were in a covered boat. Thank God we booked the one with the covered boat.
There was another whale watching experience. We were apparently, when we went out, we were the first one to see a whale that day.
Oh, wow.
And when they do that,
They
the-
radio everybody
yeah.
else.
Yeah, so
Yes.
they all work together because they all want to,
They don't want to
Wanna
have to
make
do
sure
the
it's
refund.
Yeah.
But well, what they would have done if we didn't see any whales, they wouldn't have given us a refund, but we would have had a rain check to come back and
And
go
do
on
it
another
another
one.
day.
Anyways,
Imagine
But
just going
it-
every season.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
Not seeing one seal.
But we saw sea lions, we saw seals, we saw a pair of humpback whales, which is odd.
Wow, that is
that's
fascinating.
unique.
but it was fantastic and
just beautiful.
Did you
scenery.
see sharks?
We did not see sharks.
no sharks.
When we were on the cruise, that's when we saw orcas on our last day.
It wasn't
Wow.
until the very last day.
But we saw a baby orca, which
I
made
love
it all
orcas.
worth it.
Yeah.
I like sharks better, but I like orcas.
But then we went to, of course, the cruise, and we went to Skagway, and this is where one of the national parks for the Gold Rush is located. And most of the town is actually under national park rule, and we know this by the wooden boardwalk that's around. So once you step off the boardwalk, you're outside of the national park, which is kind of cool. A nice little subtle way to let you know where the boundaries are. But we went on the Ghosts and Ghouls
Ghost in Good Time
Girls ghost tour, and it was run out of the Red Onion Saloon, which is one of the oldest saloons in Skagway. Very haunted as well.
And it was brothel.
And it was a brothel, which is why I'm wearing their shirt
I've
tonight.
been curious about it.
No, that's the one we featured on our Haunted Alaska.
That was one of the ones.
Yeah. So yeah, we actually learned a new story for that one, where there was a social club that had apartments above it. It's now retail on the bottom, but still apartments on the top. And one of the girls who worked for the National Park Service in one of the retail shops lived in the apartment above, and she was opening up the shop one morning, and an older gentleman in his 80s came by and asked for a tour of the facility. She thought this was a little odd when he told her that this used to be an orphanage, and he actually grew up some of his early years, and he wanted to see the building where he grew up. So she obviously locked the doors and took him on a tour. And when she got up to her bedroom, that's when she told him that she actually had a unique experience here, that every time that she and her roommate got together to go out for the evening, now please mind you, this is a national park, that means they roll up the sidewalks at like 5:30 in the afternoon.
There's like one or two bars that are
That
open.
stays
and
open
that
for the
stay
locals.
open. But
Yeah, so every time she and her friend got ready to go out to one of these two bars, there would be a female of a young girl, we're talking like 14 years old, appearing that they would see in a reflection in the mirror, or they turned around and there she was. And they would try to engage her, but she would never engage. And as soon as she described how this girl looked, the old man's eyes just sparkled and said, "That's Hannah. She was the older girl. She always used to play with the younger girls, the younger kids, and get them involved in all of this." So after he left and she was getting ready to go out that night, Hannah appeared. And she said, "Hi, Hannah. How are you doing? I just wanted to check in with you. We saw one of your old friends today." And after that night, Hannah smiled beautifully, and she just faded away, and they never saw her again.
must have been some level of closure that she was looking for.
Yeah, that she finally was recognized with her name.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't have happened without this guy who came in on a cruise and came to visit, which was really cool to hear about.
Mm-hmm. But our guide was Madame Rosie Peaks.
And she was fantastic.
absolutely wonderful.
So if you ever get a chance to go up there and check and see if she's still working, she was a fabulous guide.
She said, well, she's been doing it for 7 years?
7 years.
7 seasons.
Yeah, she was trained as an operatic performer.
Wow.
She just enjoys going up there and working Alaska in the summer and doing this job. So.
But yeah, she was fantastic, and from what we understand, and for that matter, any of the madams are fantastic.
Fantastic. But they really enjoy it. Then in Ketchikan, we didn't do a ghost tour, but we did tour the city on our own for the few hours that we were able to. We went to Dolly's house, which we again talked about at the last Alaskan haunts. And when we got into the house and got into the kitchen dining area, I happened to notice that the plates they had set up that were Dolly's were the exact same plates that my grandmother had when I was
that's
growing
funny.
up. I said, "Look, Dolly has Grandma's plates." And as soon as I said that, something started following us through the house. I was like, "Oh, Dolly doesn't like the fact that I said Dolly has Grandma's plates."
She likes her plates being unique.
Yeah. And it's the dusty rose pattern. I mean, you see it everywhere in
Yeah.
antique stores. But every time I see it, I'm like, it's Grandma's plates.
But really, really cool. That was a really cool place. Ketchikan was a neat town.
We did go to the local historical society museum there as well, which was really cool. We found a Disney connection with a group of photographers that Walt Disney came across when he was up visiting on a cruise. And he decided to have them actually do one of his documentary films.
Yeah. So, but yeah, Skagway, Ketchikan, and we also stopped in Juneau, which fantastic city.
Yeah.
Beautiful, the state capital up there. And we along the way we saw several of the places that we talked about in Holland, Alaska. Even if we didn't necessarily get to go in and do a full visit, we saw quite a few.
We saw them and snap pictures saying, "We were here, we saw it, it's there."
So any of the ones in Anchorage will have to be another trip.
Yes, it
we did not make it up to Anchorage, but
I would like to.
Yep.
That and Fairbanks.
Yep.
But yeah, definitely, if you get a chance to get up to Alaska, go see it. It looks like a movie set. It looks like it's a painted backdrop, but it is gorgeous.
Yep.
One day
Yes,
I will
we'll get
get
there.
there,
We'll get
and nothing will stop me.
But what do we have coming up next? Pop Culture 2?
Yep. So you might remember it's been it's been over a year because it was, I think we did it in November 2020.
Okay.
Really?
We
Yes.
Yeah. Scary Pop Culture Inspirations Volume 1 was back November 2020, and we're finally ready to roll out Volume 2. So this is going to be a little bit of an oddball show.
So we'll tell you the stories that inspired the pop culture, and if there's some hauntings with them, we'll include them.
Yep.
But not all of them do.
Yep. So yeah, definitely. It's a fun, interesting show that we're looking forward to. I can tell you, our good old Freddy Krueger is going to be featured in this one.
Yes, as will Voldemort.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah,
So,
the story that inspired Harry Potter's Voldemort. After that, we're going to have murder houses.
Yes. Now, I feel I need to go into the chat, the Facebook event that I set up for that, and put in a little disclaimer. Apparently, haunted murder houses is like moths to the flame. There have been like 600 or 700 people who say they're interested, that they're going.
We've even had people ask us where did they buy tickets for this.
Yes, and I didn't think we would sell this. In any case.
We're excited that you're all interested in this.
You're all interested, but
It's not a tour.
I don't want to get anybody's hopes up. It's going to be a fun chat, but this is not a documentary.
It's not a tour, it's not a documentary. This is what I was able to find.
As I was joking about before we actually got on the air, our production budget is basically booze. That is what we run off of.
Booze and me going down some research rabbit holes on the web.
So, yeah, it's going to be a fun show, but I don't want anybody coming in and thinking that this is going to be like...
Disclaimer, this is not a research documentary. I'm doing my best.
This is fun. This is something that we decided to start doing a couple of years ago because we were bored out of our minds during lockdown.
Me. I was bored out of my mind during lockdown.
Yeah, but
I was twitching. Okay.
anyways, that's
after
it.
that.
So that's our next 2 episodes, and then
After that, I'm doing Haunted Venice, which I'm working on right now. And this is going to be a little different from our normal shows because it's not going to be the full-length stories that you're used to. These are going to be like more vignettes.
So we're probably gonna have like what, probably 15, 20
Yeah.
little mini stories. That
Let's just say right now I'm at 8,000 words and I'm still like trying to develop the vignettes.
So it'll be an interesting one.
It's fun. I mean, it definitely makes me want to go to Venice because these are some very interesting ones. But I'm at, like halfway through my list, going, yeah, some of these don't need to be here.
So.
They're cool facts, but they're not really spooky in that way.
But yeah,
So-
so we got our episodes lined up for the next month and a half,
Yeah,
and it's gonna be busy.
it's gonna be busy.
But it's gonna be fun.
Yep.
It's gonna be fun. Gonna be
And
busy.
August is our last month that we're running 7 days a week through Labor Day weekend. So definitely, if you haven't hit us up for a tour, coming out for a tour. We got John Marshall one more time this month, and again in August, and then we won't be doing John Marshall for a while.
Yeah. Don't know when the next time will be, but
Probably not till winter.
probably not till winter. So yeah, time's running out to catch John Marshall in the near future.
Yep.
And yeah, then as we mentioned, you can come see us next Sunday at the market down at Flower Cheetah. And then if you want to come on down to Williamsburg and spend some time with some awesome horror aficionados.
Yep, both book, art, and of course the movies. We've got a great list of actors that are going to be there.
Yep.
And of course, if you are a runner, come up, sign up for the 5K on Saturday. As I said, Chris will be out there, Paul will be out there. I'll be dancing at the table with Marsha, because that's what Marsha and I do.
But it's all for a fantastic cause. The proceeds are for Scares That Care, which they raise money for families that are dealing with the hardships of childhood cancer, breast cancer, and individuals who have sustained severe burns.
Yeah, and if we raise enough money, we can get a 4th family in there, another kid.
Yeah.
So we really hope to do that every year, but again, it depends on how much money we can get together and we can raise
Yep.
as a group.
But it's a lot of fun, and yeah, a lot of fun. Come join us.
Come join us.
And
You
so
will,
that-
if you've had a not so good experience at a con, you need to come to this one. It is a family.
Yep. So, and that is all in the next 2 weeks. And then it's August, and I haven't given much of a thought about August yet. August is going to come, and it will do something, but when it gets here, and I know that we still have tours running 7 days a week, but yeah.
Other than that, we're focused on the charity weekends. That's the big thing coming up.
Yep. Always going to be something going on now.
You might have to be able to.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. We have to bring our buddy here. You have to figure out a proper name for him, I guess.
Yeah. Maybe in the next week or two we'll figure that out.
Give it some thought.
All right, with that, we will see you all in 2 weeks. We promise it's 2 weeks this time.
Yep. So thank you all again for watching, and we will drop us a note at any time. Otherwise, we'll hope to see you in just a couple of weeks.
All right, bye, y'all.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Stitch.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio.